bombs, rum coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer. Send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over, over there, over there, over there. Send the word over.
Hey everybody, this is Joshua Littrell. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Honor Across Arms podcast. And once again, today you're going to have just me as your indelible host here on the Honor Across Arms podcast. But it's because we've got something that we've tried to stay away from, and we just can't do it anymore. And the reason I say that is because we're all in this together. I hate saying that because it's like my worst term. I hear it all the time. This COVID-19 that's going around, it drives me crazy because every commercial on television now has it. Everybody's got it up on everything. It's true. We are all in this together, but why do we have to advertise it? So today's podcast is going to be about COVID-19. Why not? Right? We're all in this together. So without any further ado, I'm Joshua Littrell, your host on the Honor Across Arms podcast today. And there's been a recent revelation that's come up. And the reason that it's really pertinent to our veteran community and those who support the veteran community is because on military.com, they reported a great new article that's come out. And it's talking about this aircraft, the aircraft carrier that went to Guam, and they got put into dock at Guam because they had a huge outbreak of COVID-19. The reason I bring this article up is because we all know there was an outbreak on it. They all got off. They're all quarantined on Guam, and they're still trying to make sure everybody's healthy, and they're going to reboard the ship, and they're going to come back home. Well, over the last week, 5 sailors on the aircraft carrier that have been sidelined in Guam because of the COVID-19 outbreak have tested positive for the virus a second time. And that's nuts to think about, because everything that we've been taught, everything that everybody's talking about is, you know, it's like the flu. When you get the flu, you don't get the flu again that same year. These sailors that were on this aircraft carrier got COVID-19. They were quarantined. They were treated. They were deemed good to return back to the ship, came back onto the ship, and they were in an isolation with about 12 or 15 other sailors, social distancing, doing everything that they should have been doing. Yet they somehow came down with a fever and flu-like symptoms again. They went to the infirmary. The infirmary did the test, and the test showed that they were now positive for a second time with COVID-19. This is pretty crazy to think about, because as we move forward with this whole pandemic that's sweeping across our entire globe, we think about, you know, how's it treated versus how does it react as a normal virus that's happening. Most of the time when you get a virus, you build up antibodies to that virus, and then you don't fall ill to it again. So this goes completely contradictory to what we're used to in the medical community, and it's really concerning because the Roosevelt, which is the aircraft carrier that's been stationed there in Guam since late March, had been thinking, okay, we're going to quarantine everybody off on the Guam, we're going to put them up, and then we'll be able to get everybody healthy again, and then boom, we'll reach back over, load everybody up on the ship, and we'll go back to the United States. Well, now they're having to rethink that, because they've got about 4,800 crew members that have gone ashore since the quarantine or the isolation took effect. And that's crazy to think that out of that 4,800, they've already had 5 that have gone off, quarantined, gotten better, come back onto the ship, gotten sick again. What does that mean for our communities too? Our local communities have to now sit back and think, all right, if we have our men and women that are getting sick and going to the hospital, whatever it may be, we release them back out into the community. Everybody says it's okay, and then lo and behold, it's not. I don't know, man. I'm not saying to pump the brakes now, but I'm saying maybe we should think about pumping the brakes. I think that it's more along the lines of, I'm encouraging you all to sit back and understand this more fully and more thoroughly. So read any articles that you can figure out. but also cross-reference those as well. You don't want to utilize just one source or outlet for your information. Um, this military.com article has been cross-referenced with CNN. It's also been cross-referenced with New York Times. So we have a number of different references on this. So it is a true article that 5 sailors have now tested positive for a second time and are going through another 2 weeks of isolation. So if you've got 5 out of that 4,800, when does it look like they can return back to the United States? Well, there's no telling on this, because if they're developing influenza-like illness symptoms again for a second time, and then they have to go back off the ship, quarantine for another 2 weeks, the Navy just can't leave 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 sailors in Guam and say, hey, we're going to fly you home when you're better or whatever. They can't do that. So, and they wouldn't do that either. We're never going to leave a fallen member behind. That's just not who we are as the military. It's not in our DNA. So we've got to really figure out, how do we treat this? Because this is a very stubborn infectious disease, and we don't know how to react over this. There are 2,900 sailors that have reboarded the ship so far. So that's 25% more than the 1,000 who had tested positive that are now recovered, according to the Navy. So if you've got almost 3,000 people back onto the ship, and another 1,000 that are still waiting, another 1,800 that are still waiting to come back aboard, it may be another couple of months before the Roosevelt comes back home. So I'm thinking about those men and women who've been out at sea for who knows how long now. I actually been looking that up, and I haven't even found out when they launched and how long they've been at sea. Because the one thing that I think about the most in this situation is, yes, I understand that our men and women are at risk, and in a very tight situation like an aircraft carrier or submarine or whatever it may be on the Navy side, that's a terrible situation to be in. But on top of that, you've got these family members that are sitting back stateside that don't know what's going on with their own family, that are active duty military, that are active duty Navy, that are sitting in Guam now, who may be sick, who may have gotten better, who now may be boarding the ship again, thinking they're coming home, who, oh my gosh, now they're getting sick again? What in the world? So we just got to keep a really close eye on this COVID-19. And I was really hesitant to do today's podcast on the Honor Across Arms podcast, because I didn't want to throw, gasoline on the fire. But I thought it was a really good time of where we're at right now, as all these states move to reopening and allowing normal operations again, with social distancing and with all the things that we're supposed to be doing, wearing masks. And I'll be the first ones to tell you all, I'm the worst at it. I don't wear my mask when I go out, and I don't wear gloves. I try to use hand sanitizer, or try to do things the right way and wash my hands, but it's hard. And I'm not wearing the mask out of a sense of defiance. I'm doing it just because I don't even think about it, and that's horrible. That's horrible to think about, that if I were to get COVID-19, who knows? Who knows how I'd react? I'm not unhealthy. I'm not overweight. I'm not, the older generation, but it doesn't discriminate. It's an equal opportunity killer, and that's horrible. So I just worry about the families that are sitting back stateside waiting on their men and women, their loved ones, to come home, that may not be coming home when they thought they would be coming home, because this COVID-19 is rearing its ugly head again and popping up and causing a second round of positive calls. It's pretty nuts. And it leads me into our next article that I want to bring up. And it's not necessarily just an article, because it's an actual fact, according to the president. So President Trump this week shocked the nation and completely shocked the entire press corps that was in the press briefing that he was doing, that he's taking hydroxychloroquine, which is a malaria drug that federal agencies have said has not yet proven itself as a counter to coronavirus. He says that his doctor is giving him hydroxychloroquine and a Z-Pack, erythromycin or something like that. It's a excuse me, like a steroid. So he's giving it to him as a preventative measure. It's pretty nuts, because there's no real substantive evidence out there supporting the claim that it's going to stave off the coronavirus. And it's really worrisome that, you know, the president's touting a message that may or may not be true. It's even more so worrisome that the VA is utilizing this same exact treatment on our military veterans in the Veterans Administration hospitals. It's terrifying to me because not only did I mention earlier that I'm one of the worst ones that does not wear the mask, even though I try to do everything with hand washing and do all the social distancing and things the way that I should be doing, I could very well end up in a VA hospital where the VA could then be giving me hydroxychloroquine. And who knows? Who knows what'll happen because there's no proven method behind it. But I also do understand, in the president's defense, also do understand that there is some great anecdotal evidence out there. But the one thing that I wish our elected officials would do is if there's all this anecdotal evidence that something's working, like hydroxychloroquine, that the president's now getting on the bandwagon for, there's a whole heck of a lot more anecdotal evidence with some of the alternative treatments that are out there that are being very effective in our veteran community to staving off PTS and some of the other syndromes that we've got through natural therapies, through alternative therapies. Why can't our elected officials get on board and behind that in the drop of a hat? Right? It doesn't make any sense to me at all that they choose when to implement anecdotal evidence and when to use it versus when not to use it and when to say, oh, it's just anecdotal, don't worry about it, or we can't do it because it's anecdotal. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. So it's frustrating for me to sit here as a veteran that says, you know, I know there's some safer alternatives to the pharmaceuticals that are killing us every single day that the VA is not giving us an option to do because they say it's anecdotal. But now the VA is giving hydroxychloroquine to veterans with their consent and with their family members' consent. If that veteran is incapacitated and can't make that call themselves, they do have their consent to administer it. But there's a really, really, really big issue that's coming up with that, that the VA is starting to figure out that this hydroxychloroquine is not actually working the way that it's said to have been working. And this is black and white data that we're finally getting to now. On military.com, there's a great article out there that references this. So according to the study that's been going on in the Veterans Administration, so COVID-19 patients have been getting treatment with hydroxychloroquine, which is the same drug that the president's taking. And we have some very specific black and white data that's now coming back. So 28% of veterans who received the drug died, and 22% of those who received hydroxychloroquine along with antibiotic azithromycin died, while just 11% of patients in the study who received standard care died. Let me repeat that. 28% who received the drug died. 22% of those who received hydroxychloroquine and a Z-Pak died, while just 11% of the patients in the study who received standard care, just standard treatment with antibiotics, fluids, intubation if needed, only 11% of those patients died. That's crazy to me. I'm going to quote a great gentleman out of our veteran community, the CEO of IAVA, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, Jeremy Butler. He said this month in a press release, at what point did the VA know that the results were this dire? And when did they act upon those results? What are the VA's current procedures for approving and administering this drug? Now, granted, this has been going on over the last couple, 3 months. If they've gotten this data out from the veterans who have COVID-19 that have been in the VA hospitals that they administered the hydroxychloroquine to and the Z-Paks to. So when you look at 28% of those veterans that died who received a drug and 22% of them died that received the drug and erythromycin, compared to just 11% of those patients who did not die, that died that just got standard care, that's crazy to think. Now, the good thing is that at least we know about this. Now, we know that oftentimes in our veteran community, we don't get the choice to be told what we're getting.